Welcome to Corruption Chronicles. I'm Debbie Peterson, your host. I'd like to thank last week's guest, retired police investigator and National Air Guard Brigadier General David Deputy, who's currently the Chief of Staff of the Delaware State Assembly. His dedication to public service and his investigative work leads to a fascinating story that changes the historical record of George Washington's biggest battle of the Revolutionary War. You can find that on my Debbie Peterson YouTube channel. Tonight on Corruption Chronicles segment Pleasant versus Grossman, Nightmare at San Luis Ranch, we have three distinguished guests whose story I hope will protect local buyers from the trauma they have experienced with a developer and builder who has dozens of condo blocks and subdivisions underway in and near San Luis Obispo County. Joe Lack is a trial attorney at Angstrom, Lipscomb, and Lack. As a leading advocate for people affected by the recent catastrophic California wildfires, Joe has recovered millions for those victims. Early in his career, participated in hearings and administrative proceedings at the Massachusetts State Capitol, and he also interned for a U.S. Senator in Washington, D.C., supporting work on the Judiciary, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations Committee. Tonight, he's here as the construction litigation attorney for our other guests, Jeannie and Matthew Pleasant. Jeannie is a successful local real estate broker. I'm also a real estate broker, and I think we have another one or two brokers on because it's real estate brokers who are really concerned. We don't want to sell things that cause problems for people. Joe and Jeannie and Matthew, I really want to thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to relate a quick, although it takes a little time, history of your nightmare based on what I could pull from the court records. Then, if you're able, I'd love to hear any updates on what's occurred in court yesterday and today. I know you were doing some depositions, so I'd love to have you bring us up to date because I can only get up to March. When I go to the SLO Superior Court website, it tells me that it's all hidden. I'm very curious as to why it might have been retrospectively hidden when I could get most of it in March, and there's nothing now. Here's how this nightmare unfolded, and this is according to the court documents lodged with the court as of March. It's two cases. It's Pleasant versus Presidio and Pleasant versus Coastal Community Builders. It started nearly 5 years ago, October 2021, when Jeannie and her family moved into a new home in the San Luis Ranch Legacy Collection in San Luis Obispo, California, located off Los Osos Valley Road and Madonna Road. The builders, Coastal Community Builders, who we also refer to as CCB, principal is Gary Grossman. The developer is Presidio. Almost immediately, the Pleasants ran into construction defects. Before long, they were facing a cascade of serious problems: structural instability, water intrusion, code violations, defective plumbing, toxic mold, and other health hazards, many of which posed an immediate risk to life and safety. Within a month, November 2021, they wrote to CCB identifying bowing walls, cracks in drywall, misaligned trim, and water intrusion near door jambs. For the next 2.5 years, they submitted more than a dozen separate written notices and service requests to CCB documenting newly discovered or worsening defects with detailed descriptions, photos, and requests for specific remedial action. They sought to resolve their claims directly with Presidio and CCB. Then, from December 2021, CCB responded with endless delays, poor workmanship, and utter disregard for the family's well-being. They sent out subcontractors on a rotating basis to inspect and make mostly cosmetic repairs by patching or repainting. But the repairs failed to address the underlying causes of the problems, such as improper structural framing, excessive soil settlement, and poor drainage. February 2022, CCB had gone out to remove some drywall in the garage ceiling to investigate a sagging balcony above the garage, but they performed no structural work. The issue got worse and worse and started to show visible deflection and threatened the functionality of the sliding door on the balcony above. 2 months later, in April 2022, the Pleasant family reported leaking windows and water pooling on the patio outside the primary bedroom. CCB briefly evaluated the issue, but despite multiple follow-up emails from the Pleasants throughout the summer and fall of 2022, did not regrade or install adequate drainage. In June 2022, CCB gave the Pleasants an investigative report concluding, and I quote, "Your property appears to not suffer from any structural deficiencies," unquote. To their detriment, The Pleasants relied on this conclusion and continued to live in the contaminated, structurally compromised home, suffering property damage, personal injury, financial losses, and emotional trauma. From 2023 to 2024, the bad actions of Presidio, Grossman, coastal community builders, and their attorneys, Newmeyer and Dillon, continued into the court system. To avoid litigation, the Pleasants initiated mediation, but CCB continued the same pattern of concealing rather than addressing the underlying construction failure. During mediation, the Pleasants discovered a massive growth of mold in their walls caused by a nail puncturing a pipe during construction 3 years earlier. When they revised their mediation to reflect the mold growth, Presidio and CCB, both represented by the same attorneys, failed to engage meaningfully or offer a fair or effective remedy, and they tried to delay mediation for several months. When the Pleasants then took the next step, which is to arbitrate, they discovered that Presidio and CCB had created kind of a confusing scheme. It looked like it was set up to manipulate the court and its alternative dispute resolution system. Only Presidio was a signatory to the arbitration agreement in the purchase contract for their home. So the Pleasants could only arbitrate against Presidio. And then Presidio didn't respond or pay required fees. So arbitration stalled immediately. Finally, in April 2025, as a last resort, Jeannie and Matthew and their 2 adult children filed a case against CCB requesting a jury trial. To date, it's cost them $500,000, and the family members continue to suffer ongoing health problems, some permanent, caused by mold exposure due to the unresolved failed construction, and they still cannot occupy parts of their home. Their case includes a long list of allegations requesting restitution, including violation of California Civil Code, construction defects, and intentional misrepresentation, with the following claims: violation of California code and standards for water intrusion, structural components, foundations and slabs, soil and grading, and plumbing systems, neglect to perform construction in a reasonable and workmanlike manner, causing foreseeable harm to the Pleasant family, negligent supervision of subcontractors and agents who performed defective work and then knowingly and with no intent to make competent and effective repairs, falsely represented that the repairs were effective and the structure was sound and safe for habitation. Breach of implied warranties of habitability and workmanship and quality, uncorrected mold, sewer gas, structural hazards, and subsidence make the home uninhabitable. Nuisance, ongoing odors, dust, and flooding are an unreasonable interference with the Pleasant family's use and enjoyment of their home. Fraudulent concealment, rather than disclosing material facts affecting the value and safety of the home, CCB concealed known defects and attempted to conceal that their superficial repairs caused the defects to recur by writing that there were no defects. Trespass. They entered the property to perform improper or damaging repairs without proper disclosure or permission. Physical injury. The Pleasant family suffered an eye injury and a fall from defects CCB caused or failed to repair. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. CCB's outrageous conduct caused severe emotional distress, especially given the injuries to Jeannie Pleasant and the risk to her family. Violation of Business and Professions Code. CCB's acts are unlawful, unfair, and fraudulent business practices from which the Pleasants suffered harm. Now, this is one I really want you guys to listen to. I've been listening to a whole bunch of stuff because there's so much I want people to hear it all. But here's the warning in the case that must be heeded by the cities approving the CCB's many developments, by potential buyers, by the court, by Presidio and CCB, who must now protect the public. And here it is. The unlawful, unfair, and fraudulent business practices described herein will persist and or recur unless and until an injunction is issued by the court. Buyers beware. CCB acted with fraud, oppression, and or malice against the Pleasant family. As a direct result of the builder and developer's failure to cure defects, the Pleasants suffered and will continue to suffer damages, including the loss of use, relocation and storage costs, lost value, lost income, and severe eye injuries to Jeannie, including a retinal tear requiring surgery and lifetime medical care exceeding $400,000. CCB continues to abuse and obstruct the Pleasant family. They were 3 months late with required responses to court documents and then made deficient and non-responsive statements and characterized the Pleasant family's only 17 straightforward requests as, quote, compound and entirely unanswerable, while insisting that their own responses were code compliant, but themselves made over 100 requests on each of the four Pleasant family members. While evading its own obligations, CCB used this lopsided approach, stonewalling the Pleasant family's requests and then burying them under voluminous interrogatories. In December 2025, CCB attempted an additional unlawful delay tactic by filing an appeal and asking for a stay. All of this abuse of the discovery process is designed to impose disproportionate burden and cost on the Pleasant family. And Presidio is engaging in parallel obstruction in arbitration, similar tactics. They're requesting repeated extensions, missing deadlines, refusing to produce a privilege log despite 3 separate written requests over 7 weeks, and they're mischaracterizing oral discussions as binding agreements. This pattern confirms that this obstruction is a deliberate litigation strategy. The Pleasants have asked the court to coordinate discovery between both lawsuits because the same law firm represents them and the underlying claims and damages are identical. The Pleasants wish to ensure that the case progresses toward trial, notwithstanding CCB's pending appeal. And that's where it stood in March. The case documents are now retroactively hidden. My first question to all of you is going to be, who hid the documents? Why did they go in and do so retroactively when there are potential public health and safety issues? CCB and Presidio employ several former public agency planners and staff, and they have multiple current applications in SLO cities in the county for dozens of projects. So how can they legitimately hide this case? Can you guys help me out with that one?
I think you really detailed the case to date, and it was very detailed summary, so thank you for that. We are still in the middle of discovery. This week was a very busy week. Had the 2 depositions of the structural engineers for Studio Prime, both on Tuesday and today. We had a court hearing on Wednesday, ordered the CCB to respond to the pending discovery questions within 30 days for now. And there are a few questions I need to rephrase, but the judge did not prevent me from engaging in any further discovery. So the judge has allowed me to still continue with my discovery and has ordered the other side provide detailed responses within 30 days. In the meantime, I'm trying to obtain and secure the depositions of CCB and Presidio's employees, and those notices should be going out tomorrow. And I'm going to enforce the depositions to take place within the next 30 days as well. So the court is on our side as far as obtaining.
So it sounds like the court got the point that it's time for these folks to start properly responding and to allow you guys to move forward. What strikes me is that you're continuing to live in unsafe conditions. Yeah. You're continuing to incur costs. It just seems to me that there is a responsibility, of course, on the court as well, to make sure that as short a time as possible.
I can't get into too much detail because it's in arbitration. We have a parallel case on arbitration, and that case, it's very detailed on what's going on in that case. And this is a very rare instance where you have a live parallel case in Superior Court. Typically, those cases are stayed while the arbitration plays itself out. But I argued successfully back in November to this case live in Superior Court. And we had a great ruling from the California Supreme Court just maybe a year and a half ago on this particular issue. While the discovery plays out in arbitration, that's why there was such a quiet period in Superior Court. But I had these pending motions to compel that were set for hearing yesterday. So from February, basically all the way through yesterday, there was not much filed with Superior Court, but there was a lot of activity going on in the arbitration.
I saw that. That's what made me so curious. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for pursuing this because it's a huge community service. People need to know what happens here so that if they do choose to buy, in the case of Grover Beach, the city has been very intertwined with CCB, politically intertwined also. So I think it's really important, especially for us. Gary Grossman is building, I believe, 8 mid-rise up to 66 foot lot line to lot line condo blocks in Grover Beach. And we're already starting to see some issues there. Before we go on to Grover Beach, because I think there are similarities, and I know folks are going to share that with us tonight. Jeannie, you've been really in touch with the local community. Are there other people experiencing the same thing? I know I have a client who already had her concerns addressed and settled, but are there others out there who are still struggling with this kind of stuff at San Luis Ranch?
Yes, and that's how it began with me. My neighbor came over to me and said, "Are you having problems with your house?" And when she described the issues that she was having in her home, they were similar to the issues I was having. And then another neighbor came over, and we were having not exact, but we're having similar structural issues with our home. The walls opening up, excessive movement on the second floor. And we didn't know why. We just said, what is going on? Our windows are cracking, the sliding glass doors, seams in the home were opening up. And when we brought this to CCB's attention, they would immediately send out workers. And it's a lot to have that. We would have sometimes 6 people in our home working from morning till night with their caulking gun, filling up all the seams with just weeks later, everything opening back up again for them to tell us this is normal. And that doesn't even include all the things that they had admitted to having to do when we bought the homes. When we purchased our home, there was a list of items they had not completed in our home, and it was taped to our kitchen table. It was about 60 items, and one of them was a side door with a lock. And they said, "You'll get a door with a lock." And I said, "Our children's bedrooms are downstairs. Anybody could walk into our home." They said, "Don't worry, we'll be bringing doors any minute. We have a construction door here, which had no seams. So anything, mice, rats, bugs, and anybody could open the door." But they insisted that we'd be getting a door any minute. 4 months later, they did deliver doors, but they delivered them to phase 2, the homes that they hadn't completed. And our whole neighborhood was in an uproar. And we're just like, wait, what? And our neighbor 2 doors down walked into the showroom with her cell phone, and she said, "I'm not leaving your office until you give us those doors on the homes that you haven't closed on. You closed on our home and we don't have side doors." And she said that she was going to call KSBY if those doors weren't delivered to us. They apologized, and the sales office made a phone call, and sure enough, the next day they installed those doors. Just took a lot to do just the minimum. And then with all of these defects in our home, and we realized something's going on. How did our home pass inspection? How is this possible? Because there's minimum building standards that a contractor has to meet before a family or anybody can move into their home. And there's some just basic things like a door that's sealed with a lock, just many things that are on that list. And they were overlooked when it came to us moving into our home. So I went to the city, I met with them, and I brought these items up with them. And I said, how is it that we received a certificate of occupancy when all of these things were missing, when we had dryer vents that were sealed, so we had no exhaust. The laundry is actually smelling kind of smoky and would turn off. I'm like, what is going on? And so I called a specialist to come out, and he said, "You have no dryer vent to the outside." And then we also did not have any drains from our backyard, draining water from our roofs to the front yard. And so our whole backyard was like a big lake, and it was rising and entering our porch, was entering our garage. And I brought this to their attention, and they said, "This is perfectly normal." And I said, I know. I said, "We've been homeowners for many years. This is not normal." And they said, "Oh, you're just overreacting." Finally, after months, sent someone out, and they dug up the drain, and sure enough, it was a fake drain. So it was a beautiful drain with rocks all around it. And when they dug it up, it went nowhere. And they just said that they just put the pipes in the dirt, but they never connected them to anything. So the water was just filling up our backyard on both sides. And this isn't just something that happened to us. They did the same thing to our neighbors.
Are you saying that the city of San Luis Obispo was issuing certificates of occupancy and they either didn't do the required inspections or they didn't final or approve the inspections?
When I looked up the inspection report on our home, it just showed that every inspection or the majority of the inspections that were done on our home failed. And then the city said final inspection to be scheduled, and it was never done, and it was never put on the schedule. And so it then, right after that, we got a certificate of occupancy. I asked the city that. I went down, I talked to their senior representative for the building department, and I said, how is this possible? And I brought them the reports. I said, how is this possible that all these things were missed in our home? He said, well, sometimes the builder puts pressure on us to sign off on things, even though they're not done. They promise to do it in the future. And so to be kind to the builder, we sign off on everything. And at that point, I started crying in the building department. I said, you are the ones that are supposed to hold the line and protect us from shady builders. And he said, well, what can I say? Get an attorney. And he walked away.
Oh my God.
Oh gosh. So speaking of attorneys, this is something that I've been told by a very credible source. A SLO city assistant attorney bought one of the houses in the neighborhood, as did a former mayor and current council member. But apparently the assistant city attorney also had a few issues, but she got CCB to repair them and then sold the house. I don't know if you can comment on any of that or not. And I understand that our District 3 supervisor also bought and sold a home in the neighborhood.
Well, I own a home in the neighborhood.
Oh, who is this?
Hi, my name is Laura
Hi, Lori.
Hi, I own a home in the San Luis Ranch, but mine was built by Williams Homes and not this crap that they're getting over there. I've spoken to my neighbors in that area, and it's like when they were moving into that neighborhood, they didn't even have back doors. How did they get an occupancy permit without back doors? That's a very good question, isn't it?
Yes, and then we've also got an issue with fires. Originally, the old barn burned down under, some people think, fairly suspicious circumstances. But then there were 4 homes in various stages of construction that caught fire. And the fire was so intense that it actually burned all the way across the boulevard from the development over to near Target. And it was hard to even get away. I have a friend who's a fire captain and said, well, hold on a minute. There's debris everywhere. That debris should all have been removed. None of that should have been there. It is a fire hazard. Do you all know anything about the fires or how many there were?
Well, it sounds suspicious to me, at the very least.
We certainly saw one of them one night. We saw boiling up, and it was just 1 or 2 streets over from us. And I'd never heard the results of the investigation of how that fire started. So I'm not certain exactly if they ever determined what caused it. But the entire home burnt down. It was not fully constructed yet.
We did videotape the fire, and I believe it was 3 structures. Those homes were under construction. What I heard is that it was a person that had a grudge against the builder.
Yeah, but that wouldn't happen if there wasn't debris there.
That is true. We've taken many videotapes and many photos of the construction site here, and the debris, for some reason, they were so sloppy, and they would just pile up almost to the 2nd floor, just piles of wood. Mm-hmm. And the most disturbing part about those fires that was concerning me as a homeowner, and concerning now today with these fire sprinklers in our home, the fire department was there right away. So they responded instantly, and they went to put the fire out, and there was no water. So they had not charged the fire hydrants in our neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So they, just like us, stood there and watched these homes burn to the ground. And I think,
so how did they get an occupancy permit if there wasn't even active fire sprinklers in the house? There weren't back doors.
No, these were under construction, so they were framed. These were homes that were framed, and I believe that maybe some had some of the wooden interior structure in place, and some of the roofs were where they were weighting down the roof with the tiles. But we were there watching it. It's very concerning that the fire department, they never charged these fire hydrants. And that to me seems extremely negligent when they were paid to do this. There's part of the budget that was set aside for them to have this part of their job to go fire hydrant to fire hydrant to make sure they're charged, especially in a new development. Something that's really concerning to me.
In the newer builds with the CCB, I wonder if they're required to do that. Or I wonder if that is just in general a practice that's supposed to happen and they have to have that in place before they start building, because it just sounds very suspicious.
Well, what's concerning to me is my neighbor told me that her fire sprinklers were checked in her home after she had moved in, that the inspection was completed weeks after she had moved in. And she said, no one has been in my home. That's not true. They said that the inspection of the sprinkler heads took 15 minutes. And it's known to check an entire home, a large 4-bedroom home, over an hour and 15 minutes to check the sprinkler heads.
So we're still giving building permits? Do we just stop giving permits to CCB after people die? Is that the plan?
The things that you're describing are things that I heard from my client before she had to go to court. I've seen her emails where the fire chief refused to do the fire inspections. What I'm curious about is who was the chief at the time, because what worries me and what worries us in Grover Beach is that the most recent fire chief in San Luis Obispo resigned. His wife is very close to this particular builder, apparently, certainly is politically involved with folks who've been supported by, financed by this builder. And she sits on our city council. We're kind of nervous about this builder and our city council member and her husband, but I can't say for sure that it was her husband who refused to do the fire inspections. You all might know whether it was Chief Tuggle or not.
So Chief Tugler's wife sits on
one of our city council members.
City council, and she has a close relationship with Coastal Community Builders that's putting the crap in Grover Beach that they already put in San Luis Obispo. Is that what you're telling me?
That is what I'm telling you, yes.
That's awesome. That sounds not suspicious at all. Wow.
Not in the slightest. She's in favor of this building. Her political cronies were supported to the extent of $5,000 by Grossman, Gary Grossman, and she's very friendly with some of the folks who ran that committee. So, yeah, we're nervous.
There's a lot of implications here that are concerning between fire department heads being bought off, perhaps city council people being all bought off by Coastal Community Builders to continue to build these crappy things that are not to code in our community. And it will stop when somebody dies.
What worries us in Grover Beach is that we're on the same kind of unstable ground with a high water table at the lowest point in the area. And if he can't build on that kind of a subsurface, a 2-story building that stays on the level, doesn't crack. If he can't do that, how on earth is he doing massive 66-foot high, extremely heavy condo blocks?
The answer is he's not doing it.
He's skipping stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. We can't say, but what we can say is from very, very early on, we could visually see and had contractors verify that the first building he built on 4th and Grand was leaning. And I'm hearing that it's leaning more now and that there are numerous problems. So I'd love to have the rest of you here jump in and tell us what you've been finding in your research.
Kelvin Kovdek. I live in Grover Beach. I'll just tell you of something that I ran into approximately 4 or 5 months ago. I was walking by Palladium on a Sunday morning, and I saw a U-Haul.
Now, Kelvin, that's the one on 4th and Grand, is it right?
The first one is.
It's the first one, okay.
Palladium. Encore's across it. So I'm walking my dog, and I see a U-Haul, and on the first floor, there is a younger couple, I would say late 20s, moving out. I was in the parking lot, so I walk over and I said, moving so soon? The place had only been open for approximately 6 months. And they said, yeah, we have a lot of problems here. We rent. And I said, may I ask why you're moving? And they said, come in and see for yourself.
Oh.
So I walked in with I have a golden retriever. They allowed me to walk in. And I said, do you mind if I take a few pictures? And I was seeing some faulty construction. When you opened up the kitchen drawer, it hit the stove. So you couldn't open up the kitchen drawer next to the stove fully. It got worse. I could see evidence or what looks like black mold in the bathroom. And I have pictures of this, and they're still on my phone. Then you could see leakage in the kitchen where it dried all on the baseboards. But what was most concerning to me was in the bathroom on the baseboard was black.
So that happened in the Pleasant household, and now it being evidence of it's happening in the Grover Beach buildings. So
Correct.
what do you
Same
think's
builder,
happening
by
in
the way.
these giant buildings? The same thing. Same thing.
CCB. So
Gary Grossman, CCB.
I contacted the city manager. He eventually got back to me and said the builder said it was an isolated incident. That's all he said.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're all laughing.
I know. I told him about the black mold, and he goes, "No, there's no black mold." I said, "Well, here's my phone, and here's the picture." And he goes, "Let me get back to you." And when he got back to me, he said, "It's an isolated incident." Now, the people moving out were renting. They were not the owner. And this was on the first floor.
There's still people in our community that we don't want sick and dying.
I concur. And I was having a small remodel when this was occurring, and I had a licensed contractor in my house, and I told him of that story. And he went on to tell me a story about someone who had lived in our area and moved to Oregon. And he had black mold in his house up in Oregon, and he passed away from it. He got sick and died. So it is very serious.
Of course.
Obviously, everybody knows that, but I mean, that you don't get more
But Gary
serious.
Grossman, CCB, they don't care about the people because they're building here, taking their money, and going somewhere else. That's all they care about.
Hello, everyone. Brenda Hour.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi. Lauren, who's on here, is Michelle, and I were actually at that structure, Palladium, this last week. Same situation. The unit that was for sale, I was showing it. The drawer pulled out, bumped into the stove. In the stairwell, they had removed drywall, and then we were repairing what looked like the wall was bowed. And the elevator had not worked at that point for 7 days. A couple days ago, I saw another note about it, and the residents are putting hashtags like they're in prison. It's been over 2 weeks that they haven't had an elevator in that building. That's really
closed.
I have
So
to
how
say.
do you get a building permit for an elevator that is going to stop working in months?
It was working at the time they opened it.
Well, that's what they say. Are we sure it was even signed off?
Like a year ago. It opened like a year ago. Now it's not working for 2 weeks.
And
It's been
there's
the last
only one
2 weeks.
elevator, and it's 4 stories, I believe, plus a roof deck. I understand that there's also some folks in Santa Maria who are having similar types of issues, but I haven't had the opportunity to chase that one up. But it's very worrying. I know there's some other structural defects that people are seeing. Can any of you speak to those?
Yes, actually, Debbie, this is Lauren. I'm on there as Michelle. One thing I did notice that was concerning besides the sheetrock cracking and bowing out was that the sprinkler system's main pipe to pipe out the water to the sprinkler systems in the condos was already rusted, and they've only been open for 1 year, and at the joints there is a lot of rust. And as far as the minor defects, it's pulling away from the rock on the ceiling on all.
But that's not minor. That's not minor.
Well, no,
That's
that's what I'm saying. I mean, the minor defect is it pulling away from and been caulked several times, but you can tell they keep trying to cover something up. But the rusting of the sprinkler line pipes was really concerning to me. I don't know even if the PSI is correct on that sprinkler system. I was trying to look it up right now and compare it to the pictures that I took.
Great. Yeah. Photos. That's great.
And Lauren, didn't you find some other issues with extraction fans and ventilation when you initially went to the building?
Yes, when I initially went to the building, when they first did their open house, I opened up the cabinet above the microwave stove. There was no venting into the cutout of the cabinet, and that was in most of the units that was shown to me. I also noticed the ventilation system in the bathroom, the exhaust fans. In some of them, they had them installed. And some of them they did not. The wiring for the switches were back assward. Sorry for my French. When we went in there last week, we went into, I think, a 2 or 3 bedroom. The exhaust fan in the bathroom above the toilet in the master bedroom worked, and I did a toilet paper test on it. and it had pretty well suction on that. When I went into the other bathroom on the other side, I turned on the two switches, because you have to turn on a switch and then a timer switch. Within a matter of seconds, it shorted out. When I went to try to look for the vent, there is no vent, there is a cutout. And when the lady that took us on to the encore tour, when I pointed that cutout to her, she's claiming that that's where the vent access is, because I told her there was no vent in the bathroom in the encore.
To me, this isn't evidence that there's no inspection. The CCB is getting people, paying people off to just pass this crap through.
Yes, and that is what I've been fighting with the city council over for the last year and a half.
Yeah, but they might be the ones who are getting the money.
Well, yeah. Well, they have a contracted inspector, and they actually, one email, they wanted what units I went into so they can go back and inspect it. And I said, no, you need to go inspect all the units.
All the units, because you paid off for all of them to get permitted.
Right. And then when I did the toilet paper test last week on the vent in the bathroom, it took a while for one side of the vent to get the toilet paper to stick. The other side, it took a little longer, but it's still not, to me, it's not pulling the enough exhaust for it to be in the safe zone when you're cooking. They did admit that one person, every time she cooks, the fire alarm goes off, and that they had the inspector out there. The inspector said the fire alarm was at the right distance by state law away from the stove. To me, the vents aren't vented correctly.
But we wouldn't know unless somebody goes there to inspect that.
They would have to actually put a scope up the vent and follow the vent all the way through to make sure it's coming out at the right end cap. Because a lot of the end caps are put in afterthought because they're not stuccoed, they're actually caulked. They have flappers on them like a dryer vent would have. I mean, I see a tube, but I, again, don't know where that tube actually goes. I mean, it could be like the Pleasant's landscape. It could just be a false tube just to get it passed through an inspection. But the inspector is not going to take the time to run a scope through there to make sure that the line is following all the way up to the proper condo.
Makes you wonder when they're actually just going to condemn the building.
Well, if it's tipping over, how difficult is that to figure out? If people can see with their eyeballs that it's not a straight up and down building, it can't be that difficult to figure out if somebody wanted to. I wanted to ask, I think, Brenda, I remember hearing something about the building was permitted for 4 levels, and then they added, or something to that effect, a certain number of levels, and then they added the elevator, which made it an even taller building than the community was aware of. Is that true?
Yes, what they've done, and I should say I'm a former mayor of Grover Beach and also a former council member and planning commissioner, and I've been involved for 22 years. What they would do is get permission to build the building at the highest possible height, which was 55 feet. And then they would come back later and say, oh yeah, we need to add an elevator, or we need to add, oh, who knows what. We want to add roof decks, so we need the walls or whatever. And then it would end up with a total height of being nearer 66 feet in some cases. So yes, that did happen. It was a little trick that we've seen in almost every tall building.
And somebody's approving it. And they're saying, yeah, go ahead, instead of saying no. On our behalf.
They say yes to everything.
They represent us. Yeah. But CCB pays enough money to these council people, these judges, these whoever's supposed to sign off the permits. They're spending enough money that people are of Grover Beach, people in our communities in San Luis Obispo and elsewhere, we're all get screwed up by the CCB company. Why can't we not just get them out of here since they build crap? Yeah. Why don't our city council people represent us?
There's a key thing, and there's elections coming up November 3rd. David Swift is going to challenge the incumbent mayor, Cassie D. And he is a planning commissioner, but he's one of the good guys because he's always the no vote, or at least speaking up for the people. So perhaps if we get some new leadership, such as David Swift. Also, there's 2 city council member seats opening up, one of which is Tuggle. Councilmember Tuggle is going to run for re-election. So we need a challenger in that district, which is District 2, to basically get someone in there that's going to listen to the people versus cater to the builders.
Just so everybody knows, everyone on the current city council has been favorable toward these tall buildings. So if there are opportunities to vote in other folk, this is your opportunity.
Well,
Yeah,
one,
and District 1 too is going to be open.
well, one thing I'll like to mention is I've heard this through the grapevine. Somebody addressed Grossman about him being sued for his building or buildings. And his response was, I haven't been sued. My attorneys deal with all that. I haven't had to enter the courtroom.
Well,
So,
he's not getting sued.
yeah, he doesn't care. He's just out to make money. I understand a lot of his investors are from back in Midwest and Florida. So a lot of the developers and the finance people aren't even in California, and all they care about is making the money.
Jeannie, Matthew, and Joe, is there anything you all would like to add? I know there's so much that's happened in your situation, and we are so sorry that you've had to go through all of this.
I'd just like to add, Debbie, that we've been enduring this for 5 years now. And the reason that we're coming and going public with this information is we want other people in the community who are thinking about purchasing a home to be aware of the reality of this situation that we've been enduring. I think it's really important that buyers are informed. We had to file this lawsuit. We weren't eager to do this. This was out of absolutely being frustrated by the whole process of trying to negotiate with these. Initially, our response to all of these problems we experienced with the home was, we just want to be compensated. We asked them, just maybe give us a new home, one without defects that we can move into, and a little bit of money for moving expenses and for the trouble we've gone through. And we would have settled with them one-on-one without any sort of engagement with the legal process. We wanted to go that route. They were not responsive to any of that. And so we filed this lawsuit out of frustration. We had no other recourse.
I believe it's just frustration. I mean, you're working class people. This is your life savings. This is your investment. If this is worthless, if the property you purchased from CCB is literally worthless, what are you going to do in your old age? What are you going to do?
Yeah, that keeps us up at night.
Yeah.
Because
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. There's just so much that is on the table for us as a family. Our life saving is wrapped up in our home. And this is part of our retirement plan, that we live in this area. And at one point, we're going to make one more move to an area that real estate isn't so expensive. So we'll have a little bit of money in the bank. But with a home.
And I don't want to be callous, but I think if these people are allowed to continue, this Gary Grossman and this CCB are allowed to go through our city, through our state, through our country, and do this stuff to our people, what are all the, when they're old, when he destroys their financial aid for retirement? It's not just you, which of course is I'm sympathetic to, but it's all these people that he is doing this to.
And that's why we're coming out. I'm hoping that maybe Netflix will do a series on corruption in small towns. I would love for this to go public and to let the world see what these people are doing behind the scenes. We bought in phase 1 and we said, you built our home, you sent your inspectors out, you agreed with us that this is a defective home and it was poorly built and you're embarrassed. They admitted that to us. Their attorneys admitted that to us. Their attorney told us, we realize that your home is much worse than we had anticipated before we had sent our inspectors in. We are not going to fix anything, but we are going to give you a large amount of money and you can just fix it yourself or you can move on with your life. And we said, okay, well, thank you. We appreciate that. Time went on. Says, we'll be getting right back to you, but this is the wish of our client, which is the builder.
Basically, they gave you the middle finger in the end.
Well, we didn't know that.
It's just been delay.
And yeah, after say a month, I realized, we're not getting a phone call back. So I called their attorney and I said, hey, is she available? Oh, she's on vacation. She'll be back in a couple weeks. I call in a couple weeks. Oh, she's on leave. And then when will she be back? Oh, she'll be back in 6 weeks or a month. Then I call back then and it's just, oh, she doesn't work here anymore. She no longer is handling your case. We have a new attorney that is that we would like you to speak with. And then that attorney, they said, oh, no, I'll get back to you. I need to get caught up to speed with your case and find out what's going on. Give me a couple months. And then they said, oh no, she's not the attorney that you're going to be dealing with. We have a new attorney. That's when we realized that they really, they were disingenuine. They were leading us on. And there was something about it being to their advantage by dragging this out.
Delay, no pay. Delay, no pay. That's the game.
What was going on that we realized it was bigger than us as a couple, just trying to move on with our life, pick our home back. We're in phase 1. You're building out to phase 6 and 7. Give us a home without defect. Take this one back, fix it, and put it back on the market. You're in the business of building homes. And they said no. They said, we're just going to give you money. But we never heard from them. Then, thank God, we were able to contact Joe Lack, our amazing attorney, representing us in this fight with them. And he's shocked and appalled at their antics. He said he's never experienced anything in his 20-year career, anything close to.
But I just want to reiterate again, you are a small pebble in what is potentially an enormous pond. So if you're doing this multiple times in multiple communities, in multiple states, you imagine the corruption level. You're not kidding about a Netflix series, because it could really be it's affecting us here in the Central Coast. If you get away with it here, you can get away with it on a much larger scale.
So what everyone can do to support Jeannie and Matthew and Joe, and also to support the whole community, is I'll have this up and edited in a few days, and you can share it. Put it on all your social media, send it out to people. If you live in Grover Beach in November, vote yes on no more tall buildings. Yes, no more tall buildings.
F26.
Yes, no more tall buildings. Measure F26. If people do have similar concerns or want to move forward with getting some assistance on something like this, could they contact you? Is there a way that they can find out more or get in touch with you?
You can always reach me at my office. My email is jlack@ELLLAW.com. I just wanted to add the fact that this has a live case in Superior Court. It means a lot, because it's the only way you see any of this happening, because if it was solely an arbitration, none of it becomes public knowledge. And this is, so it is a huge significance that there is a parallel case that is live in Superior Court. And so you will see more being filed as the couple months go by, more being filed in Superior Court. And it largely tracks what's happening in arbitration, but you would never see any of this if it was solely in arbitration. And that's what CCB Presidio banked on, is the protection of having anything, any disputes being filed against them, they would traditionally all be filed in arbitration.
May I ask, what other suits, will there be any other suits against any city council people, against the San Luis Obispo for signing off on these houses? Anything?
Well, the potential for that certainly exists, and we've looked at that. We haven't made a decision about that.
You know what they say, follow the money. How many of lawsuits do you think are coming down the pike? You said there's more coming. You're in phase 6 and 7. Are those at the later phases? Are they still facing the inferior quality?
Well, I'll just say there's crappy carpentry, no doubt. Cheap construction, people that don't even know how to swing a hammer. And you parallel that with poor inspections. The city inspectors, whether they're just incompetent or if they are taking some kind of kickback, I don't know anything about that.
I will tell you one thing. I went around Grover Beach for about 6 weeks getting signatures for the No More Tall Buildings initiative. And I ran into a man that owned a contracting business. And I thought, oh boy, he's not going to sign. And he goes, give me that. I want to sign it right away. And I said, may I ask why you're so eager to sign this? And he goes, I am a union man, and I hire union contract. I do not believe that is happening with CCB, and that is why you are getting these crappy buildings that are falling apart as you build them. I would sign this, and he did sign it, and found that very enlightening that a man who is a licensed contractor who owns a contracting business in Grover Beach was eager to sign that initiative, because he realizes, when you look at these 10 projects that are going on, they're almost all CCB. The ones that are going up and down Grand and on Front Street, we see them being built. And now we're seeing the product because I also have a friend that lives in Palladium. And so I got to go inside as well. That was when they were brand spanking. And now the elevator hasn't worked for 2 weeks. You can imagine someone having a guest over for the 4th of July 3-day weekend and grandma can't get up the stairs to go up to your house. I think that's a big part of it. The workers, like you mentioned, barely know how to swing a hammer. They're not skilled laborers. So it all stems, I think, from that. That's probably the root.
And there are some other sources of information. Obviously, in the press and media, people can Google, but there is currently a whistleblower suit from a former, I believe, in the building public works department at San Luis Obispo, who stood up to some of these practices and ended up losing his job, being harassed by the council member who lived next door to him in the development because he lives in the same development. That's something you can find out more about what's happening at City Hall there in San Luis Obispo. Just a shameless ad. I wrote a book when I started uncovering some of these things called The Happiest Corruption, Sleaze, Lies, and Suicide in a California Beach Town. And you can get that on Amazon. It's part of my Integrity 101 series. There are some ways to find out more about some of the stuff that's going on, connecting some of the dots. And of course, if folks out there have information that would help us, I don't know if it's true or not, but they make the assumption that there's got to be, follow the money, there's got to be some corruption, and not an unreasonable assumption. If there are folks out there who have information on that, now is the time to come forward. Go to the FBI with it, or the San Luis Obispo District Attorney's Office, the Public Integrity Unit, and pass on that information so that your community doesn't suffer any further harm.
I do have one thing to say. I did interview one of the workers in our home. He spoke broken English and he was from the Valley, and I said, "What's going on here?" And he said, "We come as a pair and we come from the Valley. We work for $500 a day, and you get two of us, and we work 12 hours. So if you do the math, that's minimum wage, a 12-hour shift with no overtime."
So they're violating labor laws.
Well, and it gets worse than that. We have video evidence of the project down at 197 West Grand, the third project that Grossman is doing in Grover. We found workers who had no English, as far as we could tell, who were cleaning up toxic waste, which the city refused to go see because then they had plausible deniability if they, well, you didn't see any toxic waste. These guys were on a construction site. They had no hard hats. They had no protective gear. They had no gloves. They had nothing that would protect them from this toxic waste. We did make some phone calls and eventually some things got sorted out, but we do have video and photo evidence of that as well.
I also have photos of the workers on the roofs as they were finishing up the phases here, since we're here in phase 1. The workers not wearing safety gear while they were working on the roof, installing the roofs. There was no safety harness. They were just up there. And these are very, very steep roofs. Their pitch is ridiculous. Parts of our roof, if you were up in our attic, which inspectors have been, they have the nail guns, and their attempt to attach our roof to the structure, the framing, and they missed the framing altogether. The contractor said, "I can literally push your roof away from your house. It's not attached. You have a row of nails just going to nowhere. It's attached to nothing. You have major issues in the structure of your home." He said, "I wouldn't have my family in this home."
Could there be a class action suit with San Luis Ranch?
Joe can speak to the probably multi-plaintiff.
If we find a common denominator amongst the entire community, we'll definitely look into that. We're still uncovering a bunch of discovery and looking at these different parties, different contractors, and see if there's any kind of common theme. I mean, I think what has transpired so far is that the homes early on are the most screwed up, because after the developer, the contractor, probably had all these complaints and then revised their plans for subsequent models, subsequent stages. So the more recent homes probably don't have as many issues as compared to the original homes.
There was a learning curve, and unfortunately, you're on the beginning of that learning curve. Apparently,
Well,
it shouldn't be a learning curve when you're having your house built.
But also, a lot of this stuff is under the wall, under the drywall, under the roof. So you can't physically see it until things get really bad, like the mold.
You're a realtor, and I understand there's a few other realtors listening right now. They have a responsibility to let their clients know what's going on with CCB. If that takes place, if they can't get people to show their property when they're being resold, that will hurt them in the probably not, I was going to say the long run, but probably even the short run. It goes deeper than that. It goes to our city councils that approve these projects with these particular buildings, with these reputations. At some point, there should be an injunction against someone who does what they do and ruin people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I will be serving the deposition notice of Gary Grossman going out tomorrow. So that will be scheduled for sometime in the next, by the end of August. So sometime in August.
But thank goodness you have a jury trial, because these things get silenced in arbitration. Mm-hmm. And that's why I understand you probably wanted to do arbitration with you, but it wasn't working. They delay. So thank goodness that you're going to a jury trial.
Oh, yeah, I can pick right now. I can pick and choose from what jurisdiction I want to serve some of this discovery. And for this, I'm definitely serving it from the jurisdiction of Superior Court.
Joe, you're saying that at the end of August, we ought to be able to see these depositions up on the court website?
I mean, the transcript itself, I don't think that gets ever posted to the court website, but at least it's going to be more transparent than if it was taken within the arbitration.
And we can always watch the SLO Superior Court's website to see when your next hearings are, and often those can be attended via Zoom.
Our next case management conference in Superior Court, August 27th.
August 27th. Okay, so watch that space.
Being a real estate broker, when I bring these items to attention of my board of realtors, they are also in the loop with these builders and don't seem to care. And we have a fiduciary duty when we know that there's something wrong to our clients. It's very hard for me to do a resell on these. I lost a client that's bought over there recently that I can't wait to send this video to, because they have not signed the contract yet. Maybe have someone go into the San Luis Board of Realtors and Pismo and give them some knowledge about the lawsuit.
Thank you, Brenda, for bringing that up. Almost every broker in Grover Beach, at least 10, and realtors as well, many of them have come out in support of our position here. They are very concerned about what's happening in Grover. That's to their credit. At a higher level, when you get to our associations of realtors, they really don't want to know. Even though we've been realtors for decades, literally decades, some of us have been ostracized over our positions protecting the public. Yes, there's some room for improvement, and thank you for bringing that up.
Have us back on your show in a couple months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would love that. We'll have moved on, I'm sure, quite significantly by then. And I can't thank you enough, and I can't tell you enough how much you will be in our prayers, and you do have our love and our support and our concerns. I'll say good night tonight, everyone, and let's keep moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good luck.